Guys, you guys ready?
We are ready. We're live. We are live. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Joe Bergamini here, Sabian Education Network. Welcome back once again to the Friday Roundtable, where great drumming minds and educators come on to join me and Dom to talk about our passion for drum education, share ideas, inspire each other, meet new friends like the fellows we have on today. We're just sharing stories about how they met. They started following each other on Facebook, and they learned about each other. And we're just building a bigger family. It's a Sabian family because Sabian's the greatest cymbal company on the planet. We're building the Sabian family with all the great educators. So welcome back, Dom. Welcome back again. Thanks.
Fantastic, guys. Great to see you guys. Fantastic.
Dom had a really nice interview with Michael Scott yesterday. That was very enlightening. He's such an inspiring student of the instrument.
And very humble, you know what I think is a common denominator that drummers have, and we're going to see with Marvin and Lewis here, Joe, is the humility that comes out in the desire to learn, to share ideas. That's why I love drummers so much. We do this, and we do this worldwide. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. Well, let me tell you guys a little bit about our guests today. I'm really, really happy to have both of these gents with me. We'll start to my right, up on top, joining us from Hampshire in the UK, not far from London. We have Mr. Lewis Sellers. Lewis, welcome.
Hi guys, how you doing? All right?
Yeah.
Lewis is he came to my attention as just watching his incredible online videos. Yeah. He holds a degree in music and sound technology. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
So he does all of his own production editing. That's really impressive, the high quality of work that he creates. Looks totally pro. I had no idea that you were doing that all yourself. You're the owner of Total Control Drum Tuition, which is online, delivering online education, private, and also through his lesson site. And you have a wonderful session setup, so you do recordings and sessions. So as soon as I met you,
it was love at first sight with me and you.
It was,
love
yeah.
At first sight. Kindred spirits.
I just really was impressed by your whole presentation. And of course, you're a wonderful player, and Sabian is proud to have you. So welcome.
Thank you very much for having me tonight.
And then down
here
there
in England.
That's right. It's pub time. And then down next to Dom, an old friend of Sabian's and ours that we've hung out and gotten to know each other at many conventions, Mr. Marvin Sparks. Marvin.
Yeah, Marvin, great.
My pleasure.
Coming to us from Kingwood, Texas in the Houston area. A little bit about Marvin. He's an educator, drummer, and consultant. He's worked with schools and churches, theatrical productions, and he's also was involved with TMEA, which is a huge thing for those who don't know in Texas. Adjudicating drum lines and jazz bands, so he's got a lot of experience with the institutional learning and things like that.
And TMEA, Joe, is the Texas Music Association. It's a huge association of music, educators and people in Texas. Yeah,
absolutely. His former students include Terry Angulli, who's a world-class drummer, A-level Sabian endorser, and Taku Hirano, the percussionist, who's touring the world with Fleetwood Mac and has played with all these great artists. So his casts a long shadow with teaching, and is currently on the faculty of Lone Star College and Texas Southern, Marvin? Or
well, I was at Texas Southern, but Lone Star College Kingwood is the campus, is a school that I'm at primarily right now.
Okay, great. We'll talk about that. And he holds a master's degree from Eastern Illinois. So, Don, these guys are smart.
These guys are serious. This is a little bit intimidating, guys. So let's get down to action here.
All right, let's get down to business. And we see the welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming in. Hey, everybody. So let's start. Actually, I want to throw the first one out here with Marvin, if you don't mind. Okay. I'd like to start off with you. My first question for you is, everybody's been doing online learning. We're going to get to that. You've been teaching in all these different institutions and privately as well for a long time. Have you changed, and I'm not talking necessarily about the pandemic, but have you changed over the years your approach to, you have these students now that are world-class, like the guys I mentioned, that are traveling the world and touring. Have you adjusted or given different advice to students that want to go into this industry over the past 5 or 6 years, as things have changed, do you think? Or do you kind of teach the same way? You think there's core things you've always kept the same?
There's some core things, but I've definitely changed over the past 5 or 6 years because I think that it's a different student. So you have to treat each student individually rather than have a set program, instead of always having the stick control, you got to play all the way through the surrounds here. You've got to do this drum exercise. So I think that you have to use a variety of methods, and you have to get to really know the students personally, and you have to act as almost like a counselor and a psychologist, to find out. And I think the number one thing, and I'm going to close it with this, is that you have to find out what they really want to do. Mm-hmm. What do you really want to do? And if they don't know what they want to do, then you have to lay out for them the different opportunities there are here, within the music industry.
And you just to build on that a little, you're acting with the college you're teaching a course about success for the student, not just in playing, right? But
right. And I actually am now, I teach private students, but I'm teaching a couple classes, and one of the great class I've been teaching for about maybe 5 or 6 years, and I even got an Adjunct Excellence Award for teaching this class, is college success. And what we talk about in that class, and I teach it from a music and a percussionist standpoint. I tell them who I am and what I've done from the very beginning. And we cover everything from developing relationships in college, time management, money management, emotional intelligence. What would you do with your college degree? And we cover all those different topics, and which when I think about it, and I'm really glad to teach this class, is I'm actually meeting students from the whole campus, developing relationship. I'll have music students in there, but we'll also have other students, and we develop a relationship throughout the campus. And it also helps the music students, because I've actually taught this class with just music students, and they were bad, because they always wanted to just practice and not study. But by getting the chance to meet a medical student, a music student getting a chance to meet a medical student, and looking at the devotion that they have toward what they want to do, it actually has helped a lot of music students. So that's something that, and I take those same kind of techniques to private lessons when I have students that are just drummers or percussionists, that want to learn certain things.
That's great. And I think that's something that those of us who are private teachers, I know Dom did for me, and that I do, and I'm sure Lewis does for his students, that there's just so much beyond the paradiddles. There's so many other things you have to learn. You had something to add, Marvin?
Yeah, I wanted one thing to add. What's really great about this particular class that I taught, it helped me develop a relationship with the other professors at the college. And I got a chance, because what happens is that as music students, a lot of times we just get closed up in a music building, and we never go out and we never meet other people. And that helped me actually develop relationships with other professors in the college. I've done presentations for the history department on the music of Motown. Got a chance to be on the committees for our book festival, which I ended up bringing the late Ndugu Chancellor down to be a part of our book festival. So that's something that I think that was really great about this class. And I can say this to all of the educators that are out here, the percussion guys and percussion studios. Hey, develop connections throughout your college or your high school so you get them involved.
Yeah. That's great advice. That's great advice. And Dom, that's something we always try to train our students with. Besides of course, playing is core, but and I think Lewis is a great example of a kind of player that kind of has all the details covered. And Lewis, actually, I wanted to throw that question to you: is do you have a plan or like a specific method? You're a great player, and you're producing tons of content. You're constantly feeding your content on your website. You're teaching, and then you're running the whole business, right? So you're doing all the editing, all the technology. Now I know you studied it in school, but do you have a specific approach that you use to try to handle all the stuff you need to get done and still keep practicing and keep your playing moving forward? Or
we just never have time off, do we? We just work long days. Like the work ethic of this gentleman down here, you just work, and you do it because you love it. But no, I think I think maybe like my approach, I don't feel like I come from a traditional background as such. I feel like I come from almost like someone who wanted to set up a business and went for it in a sense. It was kind of formed through passion rather than going through like a school or a particular, you know what I'm trying to say?
Mhm.
So for me, it was almost a happy accident because he said that I've got a degree in music and sound technology. So my heart, you know, is very much in doing studio production. I love that kind of environment. But when I was at university, I accidentally created a teaching business through a self-initiated project. So it's all about making some videos about teaching, and then it eventually came into its own business. So at that point, I had the studio degree, which was fantastic, but then I also had this website built that was ready to go with gaining students. So I would have been, say, 21 at the time, just coming out of uni, and just started advertising. It was really innocent and it was really like unplanned. And once I had that infrastructure in place, then it kind of grows from there. And I think that's probably an important thing that a lot of new people need to get on board with. If you have that good infrastructure, then you just put your name out there and just keep feeding it, whether it's social media content or videos, or gaining new students. And it just grew from there. And I think people, once they spend the time with you and they can see you're that sort of person who's passionate and wants to pursue a dream like that, they'll stick with you and they'll want to have lessons with you, if you can, of course, back it up with great playing as well. So that's kind of where I'm at. And that's probably the advice that I'd give to younger drummers wanting to start their own businesses, is just actually start, just get the infrastructure down first and then grow it from there.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Dom, go ahead. Yeah.
That's so great. You know, and if you think about it, we're starting a business. You have to have that concept of I'm starting a business. If you just want to play the drums and not concerned about the business part of it, you'll have fun playing the drums, but you'll never monetize and make money from it. If you want to make money from it, you've got to think of it as a business. So imagine a band getting together and nobody having a plan of what they want to do. They just get together and play, hoping that jobs will find them. Listen, if I was putting together a plumbing company, and I had 4 friends of mine, we would sit down, have a plan of attack, find an accountant, find a lawyer, come up with a name for the business, and then each person would have a responsibility in how they would implement their role to create work. Listen, you like to weld a pipe, that's great, but I want to make money from that so I can feed my family. So the concept of this business end of it is such an important part of seeing the bigger picture. And I think that's what you guys are doing so well. You're really kind of focusing on the business side, but you can back it up with great playing and great education. That's you.
Yeah, that's right. And I like what Marvin said about how a lot of it's to do with like the psychological side when you do meet a new student or someone who wants you for your services. And I was literally about a week or two ago, I was having a chat with a friend of mine who, unfortunately, he lost his job due to the pandemic. But he's a fantastic piano player and he would make a great teacher. So we literally had a one-on-one Skype chat about how he could build his infrastructure to gradually get students and be creating content because he's passionate about it. And he started, and it's wicked that he's actually started that first step, and it grows from there. And it's a really modern approach, isn't it, to how we monetize our skills?
It's funny that all the stuff with the Sabian Education Network, when we put these together and hearing week after week all people who are successful in running their business talk about it, really we have such a repository of ideas. If you're struggling with those ideas, you can go in the site, you can go back and look for all these ideas because it's so necessary. And one of the things I wonder, and Dom and I have talked about this, is like Dom was saying, once you start, if you might like cutting lawns or doing plumbing or playing drums, but once you decide to make it a business, then the question becomes, it seems like some of the people I've met enjoy being entrepreneurs, and some of the people have to work a little harder to get the skill. But we as teachers have to make sure they know that you at least have to understand. You don't have to want to become a tycoon, but you at least have to understand. And I think this goes for the top players too. And I think Marvin, you'd agree.
Right.
If you're a top player and your students who have gone on to success in playing, if you don't have good business skills, it's a detriment to your career, from not getting paid enough to not knowing how to network to not knowing how to, go to the next level, I guess.
Exactly. And that's something that I talk about a lot to them. Ironically, when you were speaking, in my class that has students of all kind of majors, I talk about it because I tell them that I know poor lawyers, I know poor doctors. So you can get a degree in something, but if you don't know how to market yourself, if you don't know how to develop relationships with people, if you don't go out to develop relationships with your professors, that will in turn, they'll get to know you, and in turn you will get, when they have something that comes across this table. It's the same thing for us with gigs and whenever a contractor. The person that we just talked to that we really like, all of a sudden we got a gig and we say, oh man, let me call such and such. Why? Because you saw them market it, or they actually, talk to you. And that's the way that we, give references to others. And that's how you grow your business. I actually subscribe to Fortune, Inc. magazine. I read and I actually share articles. How do the top 10 executives spend their days? How do they use to-do lists? And many different articles like that transcend to us as percussionists and musicians. And I think that's something that's very important to research and study.
Yeah, I find that so intriguing. We've had some great presenters. I can remember Jeremy Hummel sticks out in my mind when he was on with us. He just has, and Jim Toscano too. Both of those guys just have a knack for knowing how to market and knowing how to advertise. Almost like some people are more natural with the sticks, and that's to their benefit. It's not to say you can't learn it, but I think that's key stuff to get across to people. Dom, before we change,
it's a skill base. As you learn a technique for drumming, once you learn the technique and you want to play with bands, then you need the skill of using that technique to socialize with musicians, to communicate with them. So you have to have those people skills just to play music. Then when you think about business, there are skills to learn there. There are many, many skills, and there are wonderful books and reading material out there. I've got my Kindle. I've got about 300 books on my Kindle app on my phone. Half are music inspirational stories about different musicians. The other half are business books. With that, you pull from that, and as you build your business, you learn the skills. If your communication skills are not that good, improve them. There are ways to improve them. So just like you would improve your left hand and single stroke roll, come on, bring it on. Step into the world and play the game and lift the industry to where it can be lifted.
Absolutely.
So let's shift gears and talk about the great recurring topic, online lessons. So, Louis, why don't you seem to have such command over your online presence?
I'm a master of deception.
That's great. Do you just give us a little overview of what you're running in your studio? Maybe you have the recording set up, and are you using the same setup to record and do your online lessons and create your content? And just give us sort of a brief overview with what you've been doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said previously, if you have the knowledge of the studio and you have the knowledge of an instrument and you bring them together, they kind of feed one another. The positive feeds the positive. It just really works out well that way. So, pandemic or not, with my students, we're utilizing the technology really, really well. Even though my preference is doing face-to-face lessons where I've got someone in the room, you're picking up on those psychological cues, you're trying to get your claws into the student and get them on board by being friendly and positive, like that all counts. But of course that changed when the pandemic hit. So the nice thing was, because I had that infrastructure down with the technology and having the studio and the resources around me, it didn't take too much effort to get the students on board with the idea of video lessons. And it started really innocently at first, because me and my girlfriend, we moved home just 2 or 3 days before the pandemic hit and lockdown occurred in England. So we're incredibly lucky about that. But I was in a position where I'm like, okay, I'm in my house, but my studio is still here. What can I do? I'm not really meant to be going to my studio because of the restrictions. So I just started with just your phone, Skype, and just getting all my students on board with it. Just give me a good camera angle. It doesn't matter about the audio quality, because a lot of it's incredibly visual when you're playing drums. And that is how I attacked it with my 40 or 50 students. And I didn't get all of them converted, but I got, a good 70 or 80% of them converted, which I'm really thankful for. So thank you to all my students personally who kept it going. And from there, you can't help but be curious about what you can do next. So as you know, Joe, I do a lot of like YouTube content, and that's not real time. That's me shooting it and then doing post-production and presenting it in such a way, like, I don't know, like Drumeo or other things that Sabian do. That's sort of how I like to do my YouTube. But through the inspiration of people such as yourselves, and also watching a lot of what Dom's doing with the live streams with Mapex as well, I thought, how could I do the live streaming just to the general public, my followers, all the people that are on my Instagram or YouTube, you know, people that still want to learn but can't see me physically. So got into the live streaming, managed to get the kit all beautifully mic'd up, proper lapel mic for vocals, couple of different camera angles, and I've managed to suss that out really nicely over the last 2 or 3 months. And that has been a goal I've wanted to do for such a long time. It's just the pandemic pushed me into doing it. And I've got so much like new, it's kind of weird because you kind of think with your business, you have like the heart of what you're trying to offer. So for me, face-to-face drum lessons is the heart of what I offer for the people who live near me. But then you have all these like peripheral things going on, like session drumming, recording projects, counseling people, as Marvin says he does. And I wanted live streaming to be one of them. So that has now really got going. And I've done a few streams for Sabian now, which has been fantastic. I've been streaming myself on my own channels, and I'm just meeting so many new people doing that. And I think in some way that will either build your profile as an educator, make you want to be better, or monetize it somehow.
Yeah.
It's just, they all feed one another. It's you know, it's a cool time to be understanding technology and using it to your advantage like that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Marvin, are you I'm sure, Marvin, at the college and with your students, you're dealing with and incorporating technology as well?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I applaud Lewis up there because he's got an advanced system that's wow. The interesting thing for me, and I'm going to actually hit it on a different perspective too, because I teach classes as well as private students. My private students, it was kind of easy. We had to figure it out, and people don't have the technology. So basically what I told them to do was to shoot a video, whatever way you want to, and send it to me, and I'm going to critique you. And then we'll talk about it. And that's what they basically did. Ironically, last semester at the college, I had 2 students. One who basically wants to be a choir director. He's a voice major, but he plays bass, guitar, sings, has a whole studio type of thing set up at his house. Right. And then the other student was an incoming freshman who took like a semester off. And he wants to be a percussion specialist at a high school, you know, and so that's his goal. So again, as I was talking about tailoring my instruction to each student, so he actually made videos of doing, you know, various, you know, exercises. But since they couldn't, especially as a percussion major, they couldn't get to all the equipment. He had a piano, but I let him, you know, he actually put together an iMovie thing where he did some snare stuff, and he did some quad things for me and to share some things with me. But the biggest thing with all of our lessons, even our face-to-face lessons with him, is that he asked me questions all the time about what books, if I taught, you know, if I'm teaching this student, what should I do? And so that was an interesting thing. For my classes, my American music class, and my college success class, they were face-to-face. And then all of a sudden, when we hit spring break, they went online. The lucky thing for me is that I've been, for classes particularly, I've been studying online teaching for 5 or 6 years. I mean, I read things about teaching online. I read and I talk about developing relationships, because many online teachers, and when I first did it, they just put you online. They don't say nothing to you. And then that's it. You finish the work and you don't do it. I have a relationship with my students. You know, I make them send me a picture online. I put together a photo gallery on Adobe Spark so we can know each other. I have weekly WebEx meetings with whoever can show up. I record them for the people who don't do it. And I answer all emails, usually immediately. And sometime during the day, but having that relationship with a student online is something very important, and having the materials there for them to be able to really access it. But I think that having that specialized thing, and that's what will make online teaching close to face-to-face. It's not the same, but if you act like it is, I mean, if you give that same attention to it, then it can't be the same. And that's the way that I approach it right now.
Nice.
With the pandemic.
Nice.
Louis, before you jump in, I have a question for Dom. So Dom, have you you've been teaching online so long? Have there been any new discoveries with the pandemic? You know, we've sort of touched on this a little, but anything new that you've brought in that you found really helpful?
Yeah, Joe, I mean, I think first of all, we have to be willing to change. That's the first thing we have to be willing to accept. We like to be one way, and if we can carry this throughout our entire life, how wonderful that would be. That is not my life. My teaching has not changed in the past, in the past week. It's changed every month. There's massive change happening. So I have to have that willingness to change. With the teaching, when we started out years ago, the technology wasn't as clear as this. So one of the challenges was you couldn't really see their drum set. You couldn't see their setup. Now, because of the clarity of what's happening, I am designing students' drum sets, and it's unbelievable. And I am ergonomically having them sit more comfortable and designing their cymbal setup. So what's happening now, I'm making this as a part of our lessons. The drums feel comfortable. Now a cymbal setup. What sounds are you looking for? We're adding 2 ride cymbals. I've got an evolution on my left and I've got an HHX on my right. 2 ride cymbals for 2 different sounds, bringing that right and left side. We've got 2 hi-hats, right and left hi-hats. I've got 14s on the right, 15s on the left. All of a sudden now, the change of how our perspective is to playing the instrument has changed dramatically in these past few years because of the clarity of the technology. It's only going to get better, and then we're going to eventually get into, sooner than we think, holograms. Well, there will be a light around us that will capture me in all different areas. They're working on it now. And then that hologram will enter, much like Princess Leia when she asked Obi-Wan Kenobi for help. What happened back in the 70s is now going to happen in fruition in these next couple of years, where you will see now full 360 movement of playing. And when that happens, this is going to go to the next level where you're playing your kid, and that student will be able to turn you and look behind you. They will have the option of going overhead, left, right, feet from their control. We're not going to need all these cameras to do all these overheads. We're going to need one hologram light program that will transform that through the internet to that student. So we got to be prepared for the next level of where we're going. And as long as we're willing to change, we will adapt to it and hopefully accept it.
Virtual reality drum lessons, it sounds like.
Absolutely. And this whole face-to-face concern. I taught, my gosh, I'm actually celebrating the end of next month when I turn 67. I started teaching at the age of 17. I now celebrate 50 years of teaching privately in this process of playing, which is absolutely crazy. And the change of that one-on face-to-face, this is now becoming more exciting because now I can have that one-on-one student, or I can have 4 of us online. I just finished a class in Italy with 97 drummers online. I watched them all and was able to assist them all by pulling their video up to full screen, talking to them personally while everyone else was practicing an exercise. This is a whole new world.
I was thinking about those, and Louis, I want to get to your comment that you had before. I was thinking about those master classes, and it's a exponential blow up of looking at the student's kit and adjusting it the way you said, Dom, like where now I can see, like his snare drum is tilted the wrong way. So when we were teaching the camp, both teaching a camp in New Jersey last week virtually, I was totally intrigued by the fact that I could see 10 or 20 kids online, and it's like normally you're in the class and you sort of can't see any of their technique. As soon as you see they're at a pad and they have sticks in their hands, now it's a whole nother level of understanding of who you're talking to, and a whole nother, like, try this, you guys. And then instantly any of the 4 of us could pick out some technique challenges, like almost like a drum line, because you're actually seeing the audience. So I think there's these advantages that, but I'll come back to a story that I wanted to tell that I had with a Broadway musical director friend of ours. But Louis, what was your other? Yeah,
I was going to pick up on the perspective part and how, a lot of people like to be stuck in their ways and don't like change. And, we're all guilty of that. I found it a little bit strange to do video classes because I hadn't actually ever done that before. Even though I've been teaching for about 10 years, it was always face to face. So for me, it was an excellent learning curve on almost trying to convince my students that it is actually a valid way of working. And now here we are 3 or 4 months in, and I'm totally convinced that it works. And I think that's part of your job. Your job is to coach people into those changes. Yeah. I had so many people who would just jump in to do it, and it was great. But of course, there's always going to be maybe 1 or 2 people who didn't adjust so well. And I'll share a story with a student. He won't mind me sharing this because he's a lovely kid, and actually he killed it in the end. But he bless him, I think he likes seeing me face to face more than being on camera, which is fair enough. I'm sure there are advantages to having me there, being able to point stuff out much more immediately. But we're really lucky because the drums are such a tangible instrument. They're so physical and tangible versus doing guitar or piano via Skype. Goodness knows what that's like. But with this kid, so the story is we just started learning a really tough piece of music. In fact, it was a remix where we took a bland track and just upgraded it significantly, something that I love doing, a drums remix. And so the kid was having to learn all this complicated stuff from the get-go. But at the same time, he was actually getting new additions to his drum kit. So his drum kit grew pretty exponentially. He had like timbales added, wood blocks, cowbells, extra splashes. He just happened to be getting all these new products to work with this remix. And he won't admit it now, but he killed it and he did a great job. And I think he just wanted to see me face to face, bless him. But I said to him, look, you've achieved the best drumming I've ever seen you do by doing it over video. And it's beautiful. Congrats to us both for making it work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's really heartwarming to me. So it does work. I just had to get them on board, had to get me on board, and it worked.
Yeah. Marvin, you had a...
Yeah, I just want to make a quick point. At the beginning of my college success class and also my American music class, introduced students, I asked them, have they ever, and I knew they hadn't read a book called Who Moved My Cheese? I know in the 90s, that book came out, and I remember late 90s, principal sharing that. But many of my students, and I would ask this question, I did in the spring, how do you like online class? Oh, everybody said, oh, I hate them. I don't want to do in my face-to-face class. And sure enough, here in March, we had to do it. And I would always remind them about that particular movie and which character they might be. And that's something that if people haven't seen it, you can go to YouTube and look at the little cartoon video about that. But to be prepared for change is something that's really important, and you never knew. And those same students that hated online learning, they thanked me for sharing those different things with them and encouraging them that they could do it.
Mm-hmm. When you jump in, you sort of solve the problems. I found with myself, like I solve the problems over time. Just sometimes I'll have an inspiration. Sometimes it'll just happen. Like some things I think, like, why didn't I think of that sooner? If even just getting used to like having, I'm mostly, using a lot of books, but I have some handouts, things that I've come up with or that friends have given me. Just something as simple as having my iCloud populated with the things that I'm hitting with different students or I'm teaching, so that, oh, you don't have that? Oh, you lost that one, or you don't have it with you? Share screen. There it is. Boom. Now you're looking at it right on the screen. Something as simple as the workaround for using share screen with audio within Zoom or Skype, so that now if a student puts the MP3 on their computer, they can play to it. And the funny story I was going to tell you before is I was talking to Sonny Palladino, Don, who you interviewed for the Sessions, musical director on Broadway, and they're now doing readings of Broadway shows on Zoom to try to keep that industry ready for when it's going to come back. And he was talking about how they had the singers put together their stuff, and he's like, we had to train each of these actors to get an interface and to sing. We sent them all a microphone and an interface, and they sang, and we had to teach them some recording technology. And Sonny and I said, suddenly we had this overlap, meeting of the minds. Like, we've been doing the same thing and because it didn't occur to me they're doing this. Like right now, we could be doing a reading of a play, right? But as soon as we start to sing a song, the music latency enters the factor because we have rhythm involved, right? So they needed to pre-record the music for the reading. So they're dealing with all the same things. So it's funny, and that goes back to what you said, Marvin, about cross-pollination. when we talk to people in other fields, we can share our solutions and we can learn new solutions from them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's great.
So that was just a little, that was my epiphany today. And I said, Sonny was like, yeah, we couldn't, I couldn't have them sing in time. I was like, cry me a river. We've been dealing this with drum lessons for months now, Marvin, I wanted to ask you a little bit of a left turn topic wise, but we had Rodney Barreto and Oliver Valdez, two Sabian artists from Havana, on last week. We got to Dom and I got to a lot of talking to them about Cuban music. Also, Aldo Mazza co-hosted with us. So you've done quite a lot of research into the African influence on Cuban music. I'm just curious for you to summarize your studies and how you share that.
Right. Okay. I'm going to summarize it. Ironically, after I graduated as an undergraduate and went back to Chicago, and I started doing jingles and commercials and playing with bands and being a percussionist and a drummer, I started, develop relationships and trying to get, and this is, late 70s, trying to get relationships within the Latin community because, I had congas, I still have some Valgy congas. And there was kind of a secret society thing going on, but I had a good friend, Ruben Alvarez, was a group called Chevrolet, and we, developed relationships. And then I got a chance to, they directed me to a Cuban guy in Chicago, and I took some lessons with him. After the first lesson, he said to me, you must listen to the music. And so he made cassette tapes of me of Los Papinas, Los Muñequitos. And when I first listened to it, like, man. And so when I went to Eastern Illinois to get my master's degree, my thesis was the connections of Afro-Cuban and Haitian music. Okay. And so I started studying that. And then I was in California in '89 and I met John Santos. John Santos and I became really good friends, and I took lessons with him. And I kept telling him I wanted to go to Cuba. And he says, hey, I've got some friends here who have a tour to go to Cuba. So finally, after I was at University of Houston with my percussion program, and see, all the way from '89 or '86, I had Afro-Cuban ensembles where I would take jazz standards, and even when I was at Eastern, I would take jazz standards, put marimba and vibes in front, and then have only a bass player. But so the vibe player and marimba player would get a chance to solo, and we would develop Afro-Cuban ensemble. So when I came to the University of Houston, I've actually really developed that. Some great students, Terry Gully, another gentleman that you all might not know, but the late Joe Jackson, who Stefan Harris knows him, knew about his great things he did. And so we developed this relationship, and I got a grant to go to Cuba. And like about 1994. And 3 weeks with this group, and we studied the music. They had dance. We studied in one of the old house. I already remember the walk that we made. We stayed in the homes of people, and they had afternoon concerts in the back. I remember Chucho Valdez's daughter playing with a group in the backyard, and we're drinking Havana Club and smoking cigars. But when you actually experience the music, when you're really there, and I mean, we went to all kinds of ceremonies, and we recorded a lot of the material to have it back. I mean, I went to a ceremony for Yemanya, the goddess of the water, and when you really saw, the makers of the bata drums, and really saw those things. But most importantly, you can feel the music, you could see it, you dance to it, and you were a part of it. So that's become, my whole thing ever since that particular time, because they always say that in European music, the melody is most important. And in Afro-Cuban and African music, the rhythm is most important. And that's a segment, especially Afro-Cuban. And then I got a whole other story with Adam Rudolph. I don't know if you know who he is, incredible percussionist, and Muso Susos, a great core player with Mandingo Griot Society. And so that's a whole nother story, but I'll leave it right there. But very important to me, those connections of Afro-Cuban and the African music.
That theme does always come up, right, Dom? That you have to listen and experience the music. If you're there's some great books out. Frankie Malabay's book. I can say that.
Oh yeah, Frankie Malabay.
Put me right on the map. But you need to listen as well. You need to absorb the feeling of it.
Well, it really comes down to experience the feeling, and if you can be compassionate enough to feel what other people are feeling when you go to Cuba and you experience that kind of music the way it is, it just takes over your body and your mind, and you get absorbed into it. It's like experiencing feeling. You go to a wake, someone passes away, you walk in, you sense the feeling of the room, and that sorrow and that sadness and that emotion comes up of those memories of what happened. You feel the room. That's really what happens with that kind of music. You step in there and you feel the music, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're involved.
And it's funny because I think, before I go, Louis, what was one of your big epiphanies with like something like that, experiencing a lesson or a concert or a player face to face or a style that just
maybe two scenarios, maybe. I was at Portsmouth University, which is still here in Hampshire, and I joined a big band for the 3 or 4 years that I was there. And as I'm sure you guys know what a big band feels like. Yes, you have your conductor, but all the pressure's on the drummer to keep it together, right? And you're furiously having to sight read. So my sort of initiation into that world, because I liked jazz at the time and was into exploring it, but I'm more of a rock drummer or a pop drummer. So I remember going for the audition. There's a couple of other guys waiting to have their go, and he just handed this big book filled with like hundreds of music, and you're like, right, okay. The conductor shouts, right, page 40, got to find it, and then you just have to play it. You have to feel the room. You have to check out everyone, the 40-piece orchestra that you're about to play with, and you just have to feel that energy incredibly quickly whilst you're reading the chart with one eye on everyone else. So that was a great lesson for me, is just being dropped in at the deep end. Wasn't a ferocious sight reader at that time, but would now feel much more comfortable in that situation. And over the course of 3 or 4 years, I really fell into that role as a jazz drummer or a jazz leader incredibly well over that period. So that's one epiphany in that sense. But if we're talking maybe a little bit more culturally, I like my surfing. I like the beach and surf culture, and have been to places like Bali to surf. And the first time I went to Bali, there was this, like evening club that you would go to, right? Where you would, you'd have your, I'm trying to think what their nasty drink is that they like to have. Tanduai, I think it's called. It's a horrible drink. But you'd go down there and you'd just chill. And then some guy would come along with the guitar, and then someone would bring some bongos. And then it's all like they plan this and they get everyone involved. So you're sat there in this restaurant and you're like, oh, who's a musician? Because it's incredibly traditional there to just jam and get a whole restaurant involved in jamming. And once you've made a rapport with these people, you're jamming well into midnight and you're just entertaining everyone. So just with bongos. So that was also an epiphany moment of just, it's about the energy and about being there and being in that situation. And you can't learn that very easily over something like YouTube or the internet. You just have to be there and you just have to feel that energy and the emotion. So
I think
memories.
when we say we can't learn it, like if I think of, I'm just thinking of 4 random important things that I think are performances that I might have seen. So I'm thinking of seeing Pedrito Martinez at Guantanamera in New York City. Yeah. Now, although I was in New York City, that group is legit, right? So the feeling of sitting in an audience with all these musicians and non-musicians and feeling that rhythm. And then what was another one? Even being at a Rush concert with the huge PA and the huge crowd and the power of the drums, that's like being in the Village Vanguard, going downstairs and sitting in the back and hearing the horns, and there's no PA, it's the acoustic music. And I didn't see Mel Lewis, but I've seen John Riley there many times, and hearing the acoustic drums, like they're like socio-cultural events. They're so far, they so transcend, like each one of those things is like I remember the smell. I remember how it looked. I remember the sound of the drums and the feeling of the music. And I think if you truly open yourself up to those and you love what you're hearing, then you have a chance at playing it with some people who love it And I know that working in New York, people, I'll use playing in the Heights on Broadway as an example. They didn't have any. I had nothing against me because I didn't grow up playing the music. As long as it felt good and I loved it and I could groove with it, there's an openness, and that's one of the beautiful things about musicians, how that we have that openness to each other.
Yeah.
As long as you come at it from a place of honesty, at least I think, and I hope that's not naive to say, but.
Yeah. Well said.
On one of the points that you just made there, it made me think of something that my brother said to me literally last week. So my brother, he's 2 years older than me, so he's the older brother that I look up to, and he was actually the person who got me to play drums, because he's a fantastic guitarist and bassist and singer. And when we were kids, he was the one who said, "Look, we need a drummer. You're doing it, younger brother." And he said to me the other day, he said, "I don't regard you as a rock drummer," which was kind of weird because I've been his rock drummer for the past 20 years. So he's like, you don't play necessarily like a rock drummer. And I'm sure, bless him, there's a hidden compliment in this, but he says, your feel is more fusion or more jazzy, just with the intricacies and stuff. And I think that's those experiences seeping through as a person, so I had the time in the jazz band. That sensitivity seeped through of being a jazz drummer. The best musicians are the thieves that are never caught, right? So you're just taking all of this inspiration in. And that was just quite a poignant thing that my brother said to me, because, like I said, I've been his rock drummer for 20 years and been deafening him in our band practices. But he just came across and said, that is just how you absorb it, how it manifests, and then how you actually let it come out again. And you do have to let it come out to progress on the instrument.
Yeah. Marvin.
Yeah, I just want to add one little thing, to what you were saying about those experiences. I can think I went to University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana, 71 to 75, and they had a small little club on campus there in Champaign that I saw Roy Ayers when they were in a U-Haul with Ricky Lawson playing drums. It's the first time I can vividly remember those right hand 16th notes, shika-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding, moving along. Jerry Brown, who I met in that same club, and we became friends for now, decades, watching him play with Michael Urbaniak. And mind you, this is a small club in the college town. And the same thing, seeing Elvin Jones there, when he was late getting to the club, and the club was packed, and his wife started bringing his yellow drum set over the crowd, over her head, and setting up his drum set. And then also the great Rashawn Roland Curtin. So all of them. And the African American Cultural Program brought Max Roach and his entire group with Cecil McBee, Billy Harper, Stanley Caldwell down to our campus for a week. And I was their personal chauffeur.
Nice.
So, I shared several situations, and remember, those were decades ago, but I never forgot those. And those are things when you see it live, as you said, Joe, when you experience live. I played like in the Heights here in Houston for one of those productions. I played one of the percussion books. They brought me in to do one. But, when you experiencing those things live, it's a whole nother dimension, and you can't get that on YouTube, man. You can't get that any other way. So that's my story, and I'm going to stick to it.
That's great. Dom.
What we're talking about right now, and I want everyone that's listening to understand, is the power of live music, how it is transforming personally, emotionally, and intellectually at all levels. We need to get back to wear masks and get past this pandemic so we can get back to that feeling of being able to allow us to perform and feel that music. All those bands you talked about, I've heard all of them, especially living here in New York. Going in there and hearing Max play with his band and Mel Lewis play with Thad Jones and the Mel Lewis Big Band. These were experiences that were transforming every moment that we put ourselves in front of that music. So we need to have that back, because I can remember every live performance, and there were thousands of them, like they were yesterday. I can't remember the last YouTube video I saw.
Wasn't it mine?
To us, you have to really get back to that. So respect the health of others wearing a mask. Social distance now. Let's get past this so we can get back to that live experience and bring it back again.
Yeah. I agree 100%. You know,
Absolutely.
do you guys think one thing that we've talked about on this panel and with my private conversations with my friends is that I'm sure that everyone listening to this has their own epiphanies, their own experiences, and they agree, and it's inspiring for us. But I just actually took on Don, we were talking about this. I took on a couple of young students, 8 years old, 9 years old. I've never taught a student that young, and I wanted to see. But there's a common thing that I'm seeing where a lot of us, when we started, we heard some music, we saw a drummer play, and we say, I want to do that. A lot of the younger generation now, they're still drawn to the drums, but they're not seeing. I think we need to steer the younger people so that they can have those experiences, and even if they can't see it now, getting them to listen to more of the music, because it seems like a lot of them come at it like the drums might be a fun activity, but they're not. You know, the music I heard music that moved me to want to play the drums. Yeah. So it's just an observation. I don't know if you guys agree. And I found that if I have a young student and I'm like playing a song that I really like, that let's say that I'm trying to teach them. You mentioned Marvin Indugu. Billie Jean is one I use all the time, right? If I'm playing that song for them, and then the student is 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and they're seeing me like getting happy and animated, I have to remind myself, with all the advanced stuff that we work on, we know how deep it is, but you just have to get that primal happiness across to a kid who maybe hasn't seen a live band play yet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And let me add, because I do teach a lot of youngsters. Some of them starting maybe as young as 5 or 6, which is sort of my lowest threshold. And as a human rather than a drummer, when you meet them for the first time, you do have to lower your guard. You have to show them a little bit of your emotion. You do have to show them maybe some of your weaknesses. Let them see that you are, not this almighty drum teacher that they can never, outstep or whatnot. I always encourage my younger students to have a laugh, for lack of a better term. I want to ask them what they think's funny. I want to ask them like silly questions and stuff, because it does get to the root of why they're trying to learn, which is because it's passion. But at the same time, you do need to be able to walk the walk and talk the talk at the same time, which is why I still like being in a band. I still like doing YouTube videos. I still like doing this kind of stuff. It's just a nice demonstration to the students that being a drummer isn't just one thing. It's not just learning one thing and that's it. It's just as big as you want it to be. I think a lot of youngsters don't really know what's the best way of saying this. Music is very consumed differently these days, almost for free on a lot of things like Spotify and stuff like that. So I'm trying to educate my students what an actual gig is, or what it means to listen to an album from beginning to end, rather than just a random playlist on Spotify. I'm trying to get them into the primal of the music, and what it would have been like, in days gone. And that can be really hard to do when you're dealing with a 5 or a 6-year-old. Incredibly hard. So it does help that you're at least there to steer them in that right direction. And if you're doing it quite literally yourself, if you can get these youngsters along to one of your shows, then it just fuels that experience, and they never really forget it. And you've got them for life that way. You've got a friend for life.
It's beautiful. I have a couple of students, I was talking to Joe, that are 10 years old in my village. And anyone that's 10 years old in my village that lives near me, I teach for free. I do it because of the intensity of the skills that I have to learn. And part of the lessons, because they don't have a favorite drummer, they don't have a favorite band, is in our lesson, we listen together to an album. We listen and we watch Billy Cobham on a video. We listen and watch together. So the lesson has changed, where it's now the two of us together focusing on this concept. And then there'll be points that we'll just catch that out, and we'll rewind it and go back. And we got to kind of suck them into the game and pull them into what they're not even aware of. That's kind of where teaching has gone today. If we hook them, we've caught the fish, and now we've got them for a lifetime of drumming.
Beautiful, absolutely.
I'm so encouraged, because we have such great people week after week. I'm so inspired by all you guys. It's just really wonderful. And I'm thinking of how thankful I am to Sabian for giving us this platform. I mean, all throughout the years, Marvin, I remember us meeting at PASIC.
Absolutely.
Sabian and all these companies are sending and supporting the artists to go play at these big festivals and play at PASIC. And then Sabian took it one step further and gave us SEN. And course, giving us this wonderful platform. Marvin, how long have you been with Sabian?
Man, I've been with Sabian since the 90s.
Yeah.
And that's how long I've been. I was actually I'll say this, with another company. And then when I was at University of Houston, Gary Curry came. We developed a relationship. Gary Curry came down and he hung out with me. And finally, Roy Edmonds, the great Roy Edmonds, said to me, "Listen, Marvin, I know you're doing all this, but if you came with Sabian all the way, then we could actually help you. We could have a developed relationship." So I've been, since the 90s. And I'm one of those loyal people, and we've had a great relationship. And, so many of my buddies have gone on and are watching over us as angels, even with Lenny coming over, and, the late Paul Salucci, Roy, and, just great relationships, and then also me knowing Dom and I actually go back way before all of these different things, and we don't have that much time, but all I'll say is Chicago Guitar Center, the Don Famularo and Billy Cobham clinic. And yeah, you're right. In the 80s. And the thing is, we don't have time, but make it very short.
Yeah.
We were at a club. We were doing the clinic. We took all the equipment to the club to set it up. And then when we got there, some of the people came and young students came. And the club owner said, "Hey, we can't have any young students here." Billy Cobham looked at me and says, "Well, hey, man, we'll go back to the store." And the store was right down the street. And we moved all the drums, both their drum sets, all the PA, all the recording equipment back to the store in roughly 15 minutes, and not one chord was missing. And Dom said, "This is the amazing thing about drummers and percussion." And that's how I met Don Famularo. And he and Billy Cobham will never forget that story, because it's, unbelievable. That's why Dom said, yeah, that's how we met, Yeah. But Sabian has been a great company. We're talking about cymbals. I got to show this, because this is a splash that Bob Zildjian signed from me.
Oh, yeah.
You're right. At a PASIC. Yeah. And he gave to me, and I will never forget this, and that's what it was all about with me, with Sabian and I, and our relationship for these decades, because it's always been about family, and I appreciate them.
I think that was at Bob's Hall of Fame PAS induction, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Oh, is that what it is? Dom? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I've got one of those too. Yeah, hanging up.
Oh, yeah, I know you got one of those hanging up. I mean, I had it. I said, and seriously, I hadn't gotten to hang it up, but it was actually out, And I said, man, I've got to bring this, even if I don't talk about the cymbals that I play. I got to show this, because this is a special cymbal that I don't play, but it is part of the great legacy of Sabian cymbals, and I'm proud to be a part of.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Marvin. That's wonderful. And you know what? Billy Cobham, the great Billy Cobham, is going to be on this very program with me and Dom on next Friday. So maybe we'll ask him about that story.
Ask him about that story. I have to make sure I'm on here with you guys. The comments.
And Louis, you make your cymbals sound so great. How long you've been playing Sabian, and what are your favorite cymbals?
You know what? Like I'm really stoked I can say this, but when I started playing drums at 11 or 12, Sabian was the first brand I went for, and I stuck with them because, like Marvin, I'm also very loyal. The same with the other brands that I play. That I never felt like there's a reason to change, and I like building that relationship, whether it's actually with someone at the company or just the relationship of knowing the products incredibly well. So I've been playing them for roughly 20 years and know the catalogue incredibly well. But my first real serious contact with Sabian was in Sabian UK. We've got a good thing going here in the UK. And I, through doing things like the YouTube videos and teaching, which was almost my way into this incredibly cool world, doing lots of YouTube and high quality stuff, I was reached out by Sabian UK to do some videos on the BAX range, which was about 5 or 6 years ago now. And it's just to make product videos to a high standard of the BAX range when they dropped. And that was a big deal for Sabian, because they were, an incredibly lovely sounding yet budget cymbal. So I did those videos, went down incredibly well. The sort of endorsement came there, although it's all very much I do something for you, you do something for me. It's just, that's how I have enjoyed Sabian's relationship. From there, it's been a nice trickle of demonstrating more new cymbals, or like doing stuff within SEN, doing the masterclass at the UK Drum Show, which, you know, both Joe and Don were there. And also one of my huge highlights, which I'm very thankful that I was able to do this, but when I turned 30, I actually went out to New Brunswick to the Sabian Vault.
Nice.
I happened to be on holiday in Canada at the time with my girlfriend Chloe, and I said, look, New Brunswick is a 2 or 3 hour drive away from where we were staying. So I actually had the opportunity one day before my 30th to actually go to the Vault, and I was given a factory tour with Mark Love, seeing how it was all made, and walked out with 4 custom cymbals as well, which I'm playing on my set in most of my live streams and videos. So it runs pretty deep.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we have just wonderful product to play. Every time I get a new cymbal, I'm just more and more inspired to play it. So we're really thrilled to have you guys. Thanks for joining us this week. This has been a very enlightening, inspiring hour.
Yeah.
Lewis, Marvin,
Absolutely.
and Dom, of course, thank you. And thanks to Sabian Education Network and Sabian for giving us this platform. Go to sabianed.com. If you have not, you can watch all the past webinars. There's lots of great information. Just the information about online lessons and technology that we've accumulated over these last few weeks is, every time someone emails me a question, I realize we talked about it on one of these sessions. So
Awesome.
Go check that stuff out. Get ready for another great week coming up. We have a busy week next week again. I'll be on Tuesday, the great Rob Morgenstein will be my guest one-on-one for a webinar. So that's going to be exciting. And then Dom, you're back Thursday with, I think, Chris Lesso is your guest this coming week.
Canada, yeah.
Dom's been highlighting a key SEN member and devoted drum teacher every week. So that's going to continue on for a while. And then we'll be back on Friday, and we're going to have a webinar. Dom and I will co-host Billy Cobham. So it's going to be a really exciting week. And
Boy, the fun continues. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. Bring it on. We are a happy family.
Hey, thank you guys so much for having me too. It's been a pleasure.
Marvin, our pleasure for having you. Lewis, likewise, thank you so much. Dom, thanks for being here again. We'll see you guys next week. Everybody have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.